Hello, my name is Pierre Talbot. I'm the president of Techidem, and today I will present you a very important video. I want to show you what you will expect as the user interface for this controller. So, of course, before you buy something, you want to see what it will do, how it will look like. So, this is the good video for that. So, I have on my laptop, I'm connected directly to this controller. The same GUI that I have here, we have it here on the iPad. It could be an Android tablet, it would work. And also, the same information could be available on an iPhone or Android phone. That's not a problem. So let's start. First, the way the user interface is made is on the left side. You have different icon for the different functions. So on a tablet, you would just press on the icon and you would get there. So the first one, if we go one by one, the first one at the top is the gauges. So if it's a boat application, you would have one or two engine. So you would have all the gauges and all the parameter associated with the engine. So this is what this tab is showing you. The next one is the all the voltage, the battery bank. So and by the way, right now we are in a demo mode. So of course we're not in a real boat. We're outside of the boat. So those values are not real. They are just in demo mode. So be aware of that. But what we see here in this tab is the battery bank. So in this case, we have different battery banks. We can see the voltage. We can see the current. We'll go more into details. We'll go back. We'll come back with that. The next tab over here is all the controls. So all the button that you would be able to turn on and off some equipment. So this is what we see here. If you see some delay when I'm changing the screen, it's because I'm recording video at the same time. It's not for the computer. So, but normally it's faster than that. The next one over here is for general information. I will come back, but anything that's not a battery bank, that is not engine, would be shown here. So I'll come back here. This is the navigation information, navigation trim tab, geofence. I'll come back on that. But this is in general what we would get over here. The next one, which is very important because it will show any error or alarm warning that happened before. So this is the log page where you get the information. So this is what we will see a little bit later on. The next one here is the mute. So at some point when you're cruising or if in your project, there's some alarms and you figure out that, okay, this, I will take care of this later on, and you want to mute the event so that all the conditions bring back to normal. This is where the place you can mute any component, and it will prevent to mask any other further alarm and warning. I'll come back on this. This page is for the LED strip, so it's not connected, but it's something like this that I have, like for example in my boat. Some people do have some lighting outside or under their boat. So this is where you would be able then select any color for the light. The next one here, I'm not going to talk because it's not implemented yet, but it would be to control a searchlight outside. So it's not there. This one, which is a very nice feature, those are real values coming from my boat. So I have fuel flow, and I'm able to measure the fuel versus the speed and the RPM. So we'll come back later on this. The next tab over here is more like to interact with the slave board, send some specific command. Normally, you would not be will not need to do this. For example, here we have the demo mode that is turned on, but I'll come back. There's some very nice feature into this. And the last one here is the configuration. So at some point, if you need to, you have a water level and you want to calibrate your sensor, and this is the place where you would come and do that at the beginning. So normally it's something that you do once and it's done. So this is all the general pages. Now let's go back on the gauges. As I said before, right now it will eventually show because it's okay, perfect. So this is for a two-engine port and starboard side. You will, and probably have noticed, and if you haven't, you will after that. You will see that on each page there's this master status. Master status is from the hundred of rules that are being applied here that monitor the engine, the battery bank, the whatever equipment that you monitor. And those rules will check if there's a voltage that's too high, current too low, whatever. All these rules will end up with generating a warning and an alarm. A warning would be blue, an alarm would be red. So it's being shown here, it's shown on every page. So no matter where you are, you always have this information visible. And usually in your boat or in your lab, you would have this, which is a button that can change color. And I have that inside my boat at the helm. I have that on the flybridge. And if anything is being detected, it will change color and I will be able to show that in the boat. So, and then after that, we have the check engine. So this is normally coming directly from the boat. So if it's turned on, it's green. Otherwise, it's black. Transmission in this case, it would tell if the transmission is engaged or not. In this case, it's not connected. Ignition, so when you turn the key on, a voltage is being sent to the electrical system. So this will sense this and gives you the status of that. And after that, you have the gauges. So you have the RPM that will tell you if at some point the RPM goes above a certain limit, the gauge will turn orange, and if it goes beyond that, it will turn red. So those gauges are they have color that you of course can customize based on your engine. We also have the digital value in the middle. So you will notice that from this user interface that the the gauges are not too big. They are being kept smaller so that we can put more data into it. Some product, some company out there, they show nice gauges that look like a real gauge, but it takes so much space that to me it's a waste of space, but that's my opinion. Right beside that is the RPM sync. So if the two engines are not running at the same speed, it will tell the difference. So we have this, and after that there is the oil pressure, the coolant temperature. Of course, if pressure goes when temperature goes beyond a certain limit, it goes orange, triggers a warning. If it goes a certain limit, then it goes red. All of this is controlled by rules. After that, we have the engine overall time. So every time the engine is running, we account for the number of hours overall. When you install this, of course, your boat will probably already have some time recorded. So you could update this and then it will continue to track the time. The runtime, right now it's not running, but if you go for a cruise, it will tell you that you have run for, let's say, 20 minutes, that you will have this time over there. And after that, we have the number of liters per hour as long as you have installed the fuel flow. We have videos for that, and but here it will tell you your fuel consumption instantly. If you have for example, I have an Axiom here. Axiom would tell me the speed over ground. If I combine the speed over ground with the fuel consumption, I would be able to say the number of liters per nautical mile. So this is information I can get. The fuel level in the tank, so I would know the fuel level. Of course, if it goes below a certain level, it becomes orange, and beyond that, it becomes red and generate warnings and alarms. So that's what we have. The Beside the fact that we have the fuel level in percentage, it's good to know in terms of liters. That's why we have in this tank 153 liters for a tank of 340. And everything that you see right here, if you're not working with liters but more gallon, you would be able to change the system and work with different type of pressure, temperature, fuel flow, whatever. Those can be changed. After that, we have the alternator voltage. So you're not forced to use this, but since there are so many input to this box, if you want to see the voltage directly on the alternator, it would be shown here. The ignition voltage, as I said before, when you turn on the key, this power circuit, sometimes the ignition voltage is a little bit different than the rest. So at least the voltage is shown here, but at the top, the this red dot is just that it reached below above 6 volt. And then we have the engine temperature we already had here, but I wanted to have this in this specific case. I want to know that in Celsius, but feel free to keep that or remove that. And then the fuel rate, of course, we don't see the graph changing because this is in a demo mode, but you would know over time your fuel graph during your cruising, you would get the value over there. So it's interesting to see in, let's say, in the past few minutes how the fuel consumption is. Again, the way you see the gauges where they are placed, everything can be changed. If you prefer to have the gauges placed differently on the screen, it's up to you. One thing that I didn't mention is if I had to show this on my phone, uh, the it would be port and starboard one on top of the other. So because the screen is less wide, everything is rearranged differently. So it's dynamic the way the things get arranged. Then if we go back to the battery bank, again, it takes some time because I'm recording video and computer is a bit busy. Come on, come on, come on. We're just waiting for this to show up. Okay, now it's coming up. So sorry for the delay because I'm recording video and its PC is having some hard time to connect. So it will show up, but normally, don't worry, it's faster than that. So in this case, I have the voltage of all my battery bank. I also have shunt that measure the current, so I know the values. You will notice that we have a percentage level. So in my case, I have HEM batteries, and there's a chart that would say above that voltage, battery is considered as 100%, and at that range, it's and the percentage goes down. If you have different type of battery, we could adjust that. Um, Now everything is green here, but there's something that if if the voltage start to be above a certain limit, the graph will change color. So if you have some spike, if you go in the documentation, I'm showing some example, it will show that. Um, this is probably, I think, about 20 minutes. There would be a way to have longer, but the longer you have, uh, displays start to become a little bit slower. So, and again, notice that master status is still there. So even if you are on that page, you still see why, if everything is right, because you could be remote from your boat and having access to this, and you would know if there's anything wrong in the boat. The next page is all the digital switches. So in this case, we have 3 wipers. Every time I click on a button, the LED will change color to give the status. I have put the legend over here because if it's not shown here, at some point it will become a different color and it will say, what was that color? You don't want to have to search. It's right there. It's very easy to get the info. Don't worry too much about the color right now at this point. But because we, on each relay, we sense the voltage and the current and the state, we can assign different color. So, for example, if a relay is open but there's a voltage, for example, a bilge pump activated by a floating device, you would see that it would become blue, knowing that on the relay there's a voltage because it has been activated externally, but there's no current or the relay is not closed. But if you close a relay from here, then it would change color. It would become red, say that there's a power, there's a voltage and current. If at some point there's some error, some condition where the relay is closed and there's no current, it might mean that sometimes it means that the fuse is blown or that the equipment is defective. So all of this is very easy to figure out. If it becomes yellow, then maybe the breaker is tripped, because we can define these relay as to behave as a relay, as a breaker. Sorry. So we have colored status for each relay. Of course, the name can be changed for anything you want. We have the current associated with that's flowing through the relay, very useful information. In this case, if I come back to the wiper, I have a function where I can control the speed of the intermittent wiper. So nice feature to have. Don't need to buy external device for this. The bilge pump is here. And after that, we have the general status. Of course, that's it's a lot of things in there. I have my water level, black water, and some like smoke detector, all of this. The IMU is inside there, something that measure the roll and pitch. So there's some status that tells if anything is wrong with this. And then there's different status of the slave, how much time it's been running. The AC system, so if there's any, you have this thing going on, you would get the status. So, and then this page will tell all and any warning and alarm and sometimes info. It will tell exactly at which time the event occurred. It will say if it's an alarm, it's a warning or an info, and it will give the details. If there's a voltage, current, pressure, it will have the information about it. So this is where once you see your button changing color, you would come here and look at the different color, and you can hack the alarm. So if it's flashing blue or red, you come here and you can hack the alarms. It will stop the sound. It will stop flashing. You can do the same thing on the button. You press on it, and if you press the clear button, then you would be able to clear the page. The buzzer enable. If you don't want this to be enabled, just have the visual warning. You would turn that thing on. And after that, we have the mute. So anything that you want to mute because it's generating false warning because an equipment is broken and but you know about it, you can mute, so it will not generate any warning and alarm. And after that, so you can mute anything over here. And then we have the LED. So this unit can drive LED strip. If it's only white, it's easy. If it's color, then you can come here, and if you want all red, you would click on red. If it's all green, click on green. In my case, I have inside on each side, port side, starboard side, a LED strip, so I can control each of them separately. It will give the current of the LED strip, and also the thing here, the color wheel. If you click on a specific color, then the LED strip would become the color that you want. This is the intensity, so you would be able to control the intensity. So let's say at night you want to have a nice ambience, put it, let's say, blue. You could have like a low blue, so everything is possible with this. Again, this searchlight, I'm not going there because it's not in place. So this next page is the fuel graph. So there's one graph, for example, the one on the left is the one of the fuel versus the RPM. The one in the center is the fuel consumption versus the speed over ground. And the next one is the liter per nautical mile. Of course, as I said, if you are using gallon, you could change this. You can have the graph to, for example, well, in this case, when I did that, I didn't have the a fuel flow on the starboard side, but if you normally you would get the value, and if clicking on both would combine both sides. But since I only have data for the port side, this is what's being shown here. So it's interesting because at some point you see here in the center graph, there's a little bump where if you run at, let's say, 21, 22 knots, it becomes advantageous. So this is interesting. Not all engines have a linear consumption. At some point you see there's a little bump. So if you navigate into this, it's more fuel efficient. Right, for example, on the right side, it showed that past some speed, you would go faster. At the end, it would not cost much because you will arrive faster at the place you wanted to go. So this is what those graph is able to give you. There's one thing below is the database update enable or disable. So for example, in my case, I have to pass some rapid, and of course there's more fuel flow during that section of the river. So I didn't want it to have the database to have those numbers, so I can disable that temporarily and re-enable that. But still, so what it does is it takes the value that it receives, it put that in the database, so it doesn't record all the numbers, it just sums the values and it counts the number of values. So if you have, let's say, 10 values, It will sum all of them, and knowing that it has recorded 10 values, at the end we just divide by 10, and this is how we get this. So this database is always updated, and overall your graph will become a bit more smoother. At some point, if there's some numbers that are outside, sometimes it's possible, depending how the fuel flow, and there might be some outliers, some weird numbers. It's possible. There's a way to fix them, but still. So very interesting thing to have is the fuel flow. Right here, this is the debug page. You can force, for example, if I go there and I force an alarm, I would be able to test that feature. Right now we're in demo mode, so it doesn't work. If I come here and I turn that on, I see the raw value that has been sent from the slave board to the master board. So all these values, of course, some of them, for example, if it's a battery bank, a voltage is a voltage. That's pretty simple. In some case, it might be that it's a voltage associated with a temperature sensor. Of course, this is only the voltage. Inside of Node-RED, there's the equation that translates the voltage into, let's say, a pressure or temperature or RPM or all these things. So you only see voltage and current. You don't see any of the N value that you want to have. So there's a way to access those values. And then there's a way to have some special command, like for example, if I get the NEMA 2000 values, I don't want to do a clear. I want to get this. For example, if I click on this and I do a request, and then I have all the messages that's been received from the unit. In this case, those are coming from the Axiom. So Axiom is sending messages. So I have all the different message, and I know, like say, how many has been received. Like, for example, this one has been. In fact, a lot of them, but some messages are less often. So, but that's a way to see if your NME 2000 works. Like, say you have a sensor connected directly to NME bus, you would be able to see if you receive the messages. So different command over here. Of course, some you won't have access because some are being used by us for the initial calibration. But still very useful to have. And then we have the last tab over here, which is the calibration. So of course, if you come here and you press something by mistake, nothing will happen. You have to turn on the calibration, and then if you do anything over here, it will become effective. So for example, here I have my rudder indication, and I would be able to change when at the beginning I put the rudder on one side and then the other side, center, and then I calibrate that, and after that I'm fine. Before I talk to you about the engine hours, so when you connect this, let's say your engine have 500 hours, you would come here and you would define 500. So those are not legal values because anyone can change them anytime. Be aware of that. So normally the engine have their own count hours, but it's good to have it here. The fuel level, calibrate this. Digital compass, there's one inside, so you can make some correction depending how the box has been mounted in the boat. Fixing the fuel flow database. There, as I said, if there are some outliers, there's a way to fix them. Water level, black water, the calibrate the engine pressure and temperature. So all of this is possible to do. So in summary, this is what's shown here is for a two-engine boat. Again, if you have a single engine, some of the things shown here would not be there. If you want to have more things to show, of course, all of this is made of widget. So, for example, if you don't want to have gauges shown the way they are shown, there's a way to have something different. So it's Node-RED, so there's a lot of it's a library of different applets that you can use. So you could have different way of showing the information. If it's not a boat application, but it's something like a R&D project, a university project, then of course would be totally different. But starting from this user interface and starting from the everything that's been built for a boat, you would look into this and adapt for your own project. So that was the video showing the user interface. Again, it can be customized to anything you want. That's the great thing, and I hope you enjoyed that. If there's any question, information you want to see specifically, I can generate videos for that. So thank you again.